Hey Alexander, so this is Mr. Finesse. I figured it's easier to just make a video of this. And instead of going back and forth from emails, I know you said you were stressed out. Don't be stressed out. This is a learning experience, you know. Programming is not always easy. Okay, so if it seems hard, that means everything's normal. So you'll get this more and more the more you do it. So even if you think, oh, I'm never going to get this, that's not true. All right, so just be patient with yourself, and especially in the circumstances we're in, it's going to just make everything a little bit more stressful. So just take a deep breath, and let's just look at it. So I'll walk you through it. So if I'm taking a look here at the 33 Return to Thornbush Farm, number one is a comment. You'll notice it's a comment because you see the hashtag. So if you put a hashtag in front of any code, anything at all right, it's going to turn it into a comment. That just means that the comment is not going to be looked at by the compiler, or whatever's running this code will ignore it. Okay, so we use comments obviously to put information into our code, to explain it, to make it easier for people who might read it later on. In this case, Code Combat has given you instructions, and it's putting it right into the code. So if we took away the comment, the problem would be it would become an error. Okay, so it would start treating it like an actual line of code, and of course it's not. So I'll put the comment there back, and then the first thing I'm looking at on line 2 is a function, and I know that because of the keyword def, D-E-F, which means define. Okay, it stands for define. And after def is the name of the function, maybe build trap. Normally we make this name up. When you create a function, it's custom code. Now, Code Combat throughout gives you a lot of information, and a lot of times they'll give you the name already. So they made the name for you, and then after this is the parentheses followed by a colon. Okay, and then that's basically the first line of your function. Now, in the parentheses, you'll see that there are two elements. There's an X comma and a Y comma. So what they did was they just used two arbitrary, well, it's not arbitrary. They used X and Y to stand for the X and Y coordinates. They could have used a different name. They could have used Bob. They could have used Phil. They used X and Y because it makes sense. Okay, so these are actually variables. These are going to contain data, and these things are going to be used by the function maybe build trap to accept some data that's going to come from somewhere else, as we're going to see in a minute. All right, so X is just simply a name, a symbol that stands for an area of computer memory that's going to hold some data, and the same with Y. They're just symbols. Okay, and you'll notice that we defined maybe build trap to contain two parameters, like to accept, two parameters, X and Y. That's what these things are called, parameters. Okay, they're actually variables. Okay, but they are known as parameters when they're inside of, you'll see that when they're inside these parentheses of a function. Okay, so what it's gonna use these things for is when maybe build trap gets run down here in our while true loop, it's going to expect a couple of pieces of data sent to it. Okay, the X and the Y coordinate. Once it gets this data inside the function maybe build trap, it's going to use these things to do different stuff. In other words, once it gets information, the X coordinate and the Y coordinate, which of course corresponds over here, on somewhere on the game board, it's going to use this information in the function to do things. So in this case, if you look at line 4, it's going to move the hero to whatever the X and Y coordinates that were passed in at the time when the function was called. And it's going to use this information again to move our hero, and then the hero is going to look for an enemy. And by the way, hero find nearest enemy is just a method that looks for something nearby an enemy, and then it moves that information into this other variable called enemy. Okay, now we need to use variables because this information changes all the time as the game progresses. So we can't really write in the name of the enemy every single time. It's not possible. So we need to store that information into a variable, a place to hold it until it changes again. So while we have this information in the variable, it's going to be used inside, in different ways. In this case, our if statement is looking at enemy. It's saying, hey, is there an enemy there? Okay, if not, I don't want to do anything. So let's just take it a step at a time. So I have my function up here. Okay, what this line 8 is, this comment on line 8 is asking me to do is to use build xy to build a fire trap at the given x and y. The given x and y is this. That's what they're talking about. These two coordinates, these two parameters. So we need to use them. So to do that, okay, we're going to use our hero object. Okay, and then I'm just going to use this IntelliSense drop down just to complete it. Okay, and I'm going to make a couple of changes to this. I'm going to change fence to fire trap, since that's what they want us to do. Oops. Okay, and then I'm going to make a change to these guys. Okay, I don't want to hard code these positions because they could change all the time. But I can get them from here. Since the X and Y represents data that was passed into maybe build trap, this data is going to change. So all I need to do, instead of using the actual hard-coded data, I'll simply change these to X and Y. Okay? So we're using X and Y that was passed in here on line 4 to move to a certain spot. And we're also using X and Y to tell the hero where to build his fire trap. So it's telling him where to move, it's telling him where to build a fire trap. Now the reason it's important to use variables and not just hard code values in is because if we go down here to our while loop, this is our game loop that's going to keep repeating over and over again. We're going to be doing this, we're going to repeatedly be doing this code. So if you take a look at line 12, maybe build trap 43 and 50, this is a calling statement. This is actually calling our function up here. We have to do this because functions aren't actually run until they're called. Okay, what maybe build trap on line 12 is doing here is it's calling the function and it's passing in data. It's passing in a couple of arguments here. 43, which corresponds to our x coordinate, and 50, which is our y coordinate. So when you call maybe build trap and pass in information inside it, it's inside these parentheses here. 43 goes up to, it gets caught by the x up here. It's transferred from here up to the x. So it goes into that variable. It gets stored in x. And 50 then gets stored in y. So try to imagine x and y suddenly being replaced with 43 and 50 at the time that this line gets run. All right, so 43 is then going to be in x, 50 is going to be in y, and that way inside of our function we can use it. So the hero is going to move to 43 and 50 xy, and then he's going to build a fire trap at 43 and 50. Now the next time, the next statement, they're telling you, let's use maybe build fire trap at the next exit. I'm sorry, at the left entrance. So what I'm simply going to do is copy this line. I'm going to paste it, and I'm going to change these coordinates from 43 to 50 to this x over here, 25, 34. Cool. So I'm going to change these coordinates to 25 and 34. Okay. And now I'm going to just simply repeat on this last statement here, and I'm going to change that to, you guessed it, the coordinates of this bottom x, 43 and 20. So every time I call my function up here and pass it new data, it's going to do new things. It's going to have some new information, but it's going to be able to do the same stuff. Okay, so we can reuse maybe build trap as many times as we want. And the only thing that's ever going to change is the information that we pass to it. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to see if I can run this thing, if it works. Let's just run it and see what happens. Okay, so he goes to the top one. Now he's calling line 15. Now line 17 is being called. Okay, and as this is being called, the stuff inside of this function is being executed, but with different data. So you see that it's the same code up here, but it's getting past different information, so he can go to different places and do the same code up here. So we're reusing this function, maybe build trap, over and over again without having to recode the same lines over and over again. Okay, so we can reuse this function. Okay, we don't have to keep redefining it. We don't have to keep recoding the same lines. Okay, and all we have to do in the while loop is just simply call the function using its name and then passing in different pieces of data, which is then represented up in the function by different names, different parameter names. So this is we're just using x, y, excuse me, in this example. Okay, so I hope this helps. Let me know if you have any questions. Okay, and have a good day.